dear listeners. Welcome back to our podcast where we help you learn and improve your English skills. I'm Linda, and with me today is Leo.
Hi, everyone. We are so happy to have you with us. Today, we have an exciting topic that many people experience when they travel. We are going to talk about being at an airport. Whether you're flying for a vacation, business, or visiting family, being at an airport is something we all deal with at some point.
Yes, airports can be both fun and a little stressful, especially if you're traveling alone or for the first time. But don't worry. In this podcast, we're going to guide you through everything you need to know about being at the airport, step by step.
Exactly, and remember, we are here to make this as simple as possible. We'll use basic English and explain things clearly. So, let's start from the beginning, arriving at the airport.
Right, so the first thing is getting to the airport. Usually, you can take a taxi, bus, train, or even drive yourself. If you're driving, make sure to arrive early because parking can take some time. And don't forget to check the time of your flight.
That's super important. You don't want to be late. Most airlines recommend you arrive at least 2 hours before your flight for domestic trips and 3 hours for international flights, so give yourself plenty of time.
Yes, and once you arrive, the first thing you usually see is the terminal. The airport terminal is like a big building where all the important things happen: checking in, getting your boarding pass, going through security, and of course, waiting for your flight.
Speaking of checking in, that's your next step after arriving. You go to the airline counter or use one of those self-service kiosks. Do you know what a kiosk is, Linda?
Good question. A kiosk is like a small machine that helps you do things yourself, like print your boarding pass. You can use your passport or booking number to check in.
Exactly. After checking in, you get your boarding pass. This is very important because without it, you can't get on the plane. It has all the details like your name, flight number, and seat number. Oh, and don't forget your passport if you're flying internationally.
And once you've checked in, it's time to drop off your luggage if you have any. This is called baggage drop. You give your big suitcases to the airline staff, and they send them to the plane.
That's right, but remember, not all suitcases go under the plane. Sometimes you have a carry-on bag. A carry-on bag is a small suitcase or backpack that you can bring with you onto the plane. Make sure it's not too big because there are size and weight limits.
Yes, and that's something you need to check before you travel. If your bag is too heavy, you might have to pay extra.
Now, after you've checked in, dropped your bags, and printed your boarding pass, it's time for security. This is a very important part of the airport process.
Security is where you and your belongings are checked to make sure you're safe to fly. You'll need to take out your liquids, like water or perfume, and put your electronics, like laptops or phones, in a separate tray. It sounds a bit scary, but it's really easy once you do it.
Yes, and it's good to be patient because sometimes there's a line. Oh, and don't forget to take off your shoes and belt if they ask you to.
Once you pass security, you're almost ready to fly. But you still have some time before boarding the plane. What can you do at the airport while waiting for your flight, Leo?
Oh, there are so many things you can do. You can go to the airport shops and buy snacks, magazines, or even souvenirs. Some airports have restaurants, cafes, and even bookstores. If you have extra time, it's a good idea to grab a bite to eat or find a place to relax.
And don't forget to check the departure screens. These are large digital boards that show you when your flight is boarding and if there are any changes, like delays. You don't want to miss those updates.
Yes, that's very important. So now that you're through security, you've got your boarding pass and you're waiting at your gate, you're ready to board the plane.
Exactly, but boarding the plane is something we'll talk about in the next episode. We still have a lot more to cover, like going through customs, what happens inside the plane, and much more.
Okay, and now we're going to continue our journey from where we left off getting ready to board the plane.
And we talked about arriving at the airport, checking in, going through security, and waiting at the gate. Now, let's pick up where we left off. Leo, do you want to start with boarding?
Sure, so after you've waited at your gate, they'll make an announcement. Usually, it's something like, Flight ABC 1 to 3 to New York is now boarding. That means it's time to get ready to board the plane. You should listen carefully to the announcements because sometimes they call passengers by group or row number.
Yes, airlines often board in sections to make things go smoothly. For example, first-class passengers or people who need special assistance usually board first. Then they'll call the rest of the passengers by rows or boarding groups. You'll find your boarding group or row number on your boarding pass.
And don't worry if you don't understand the announcement right away. They usually repeat it a few times and there are screens showing which groups are boarding. So you just need to keep an eye on your group or row.
That's a great point. Once your group is called, it's time to line up. You'll hand your boarding pass to the staff at the gate. Sometimes they'll scan it electronically, and then you're good to go. Now, depending on the airport, you'll either walk through a jet bridge, which is a long hallway that connects directly to the plane, or you'll take a bus that brings you to the plane on the tarmac.
I remember the first time I used a jet bridge, it was so cool. It feels like you're walking straight into the airplane from the terminal. But like Linda said, sometimes you take a bus, especially at smaller airports. Either way, you'll soon be stepping onto the plane.
Once you get on the plane, one of the first things you'll notice is how narrow the aisle is. It's important to be patient and wait for others to put their bags away and find their seats. You might need to help yourself a little by lifting your carry-on bag into the overhead compartment. If it's too heavy, don't worry, there are always flight attendants nearby who are happy to help.
Yes, flight attendants are your friends on the plane. They're there to help you with anything, like finding your seat, storing your luggage, or even answering questions about the flight. And speaking of seats, your seat number is printed on your boarding pass, so make sure you check it. Usually, it's a combination of a letter and a number, like 1 to A or 15C. The letter tells you which side of the plane you're sitting on, and the number is the row.
Exactly. And remember, planes usually have 3 types of seats: window seats, aisle seats, and middle seats. The window seat is by the window, of course, so you can look outside. The aisle seat is near the walkway, which is good if you like to get up often. And the middle seat well, it's in the middle.
The middle seat isn't always the most comfortable because you have someone on both sides of you, but it's all part of the experience. So once you've found your seat, it's time to get settled. This is the moment when most people put their phones on airplane mode. Linda, why do we need to do that?
Good question. Airplane mode is a setting on your phone that turns off the signal, so your phone doesn't interfere with the plane's communication system. It's very important to switch to airplane mode before takeoff. You can still use your phone for games, music, or reading, but you won't be able to make calls or use the internet unless there's in-flight Wi-Fi.
That's right, some planes have Wi-Fi these days, but it usually costs extra. Once you're seated and in airplane mode, you'll also need to fasten your seatbelt. The flight attendants will come around to check if everyone is buckled up before takeoff.
And speaking of takeoff, this is the part where the plane begins to move to the runway. You'll feel the plane start to roll forward slowly at first. But then, when the plane is ready for takeoff, it speeds up, and you'll feel a push as the plane leaves the ground.
Takeoff can be both exciting and a little scary if you've never flown before. It feels like you're in a big car that suddenly lifts into the air. Some people feel a bit nervous, but don't worry, it's all very normal. And once you're in the air, the flight attendants will come back to make sure everyone is comfortable.
Exactly. Once you're flying smoothly, the seatbelt sign might turn off, which means you can get up and use the bathroom or stretch your legs. But it's always a good idea to stay in your seat with your seatbelt fastened, just in case there's turbulence. Turbulence is when the plane shakes a little because of air movement, but it's completely normal and safe.
Yes, turbulence is nothing to worry about. Just think of it like bumps in the road when you're in a car. The pilot and flight attendants will guide you through everything. And after the plane is steady, they'll start the in-flight service. Linda, do you want to explain what that is?
Sure, in-flight service is when the flight attendants come around with drinks and snacks. On shorter flights, you might get a small drink, like juice or water, and maybe a snack, like crackers or cookies. On longer flights, they might serve a full meal with drinks and dessert.
It's always nice to have a little snack during the flight. And if you have special dietary needs, like if you're vegetarian or have allergies, you can ask for special meals when you book your flight. Just let the airline know ahead of time and they'll prepare something just for you.
That's right. After the in-flight service, most people settle down to relax. You can read, watch movies, or just rest. Some planes even have small screens in front of each seat where you can choose from different movies and TV shows.
I love watching movies during flights. It really helps pass the time. But if you're not into watching movies, bring a good book or download a few podcasts before you board. You can listen to our podcast, for example.
Great idea, Leo. Now, while we're in the air, it's also important to know how to stay comfortable. Long flights can be tiring, so it's a good idea to bring a travel pillow, an eye mask, or even earplugs to help you sleep. And remember to stay hydrated. Planes can make you feel a bit dry, so drink water often.
Yes, hydration is key. It's easy to forget to drink water on a plane, but it really helps you feel better during and after the flight. You can also walk around the cabin if it's safe to do so, just to stretch your legs.
That's really important, especially on long flights. Sitting for a long time can make your legs feel stiff, so getting up to stretch is a good idea. And don't forget to follow the flight attendant's instructions. They're there to help make your flight safe and comfortable.
Absolutely, and we've covered a lot: boarding the plane, finding your seat, what to expect during the flight, and how to stay comfortable. In our next and final part, we'll talk about what happens when you arrive at your destination landing, going through customs, and picking up your luggage.
Yes, we're getting closer to the end of our journey. We hope this part has helped you feel more prepared for your next flight, especially if it's your first time.
That's right, and today we're going to talk about the final part of your airport journey: landing, going through customs, picking up your luggage, and leaving the airport. There's still so much to learn, and we want to make sure you feel confident about every step.
Exactly, Leo. So let's start with landing. After spending time in the air, you'll feel the plane begin to descend. That means it's slowly going down toward the airport. You might notice the plane tilting slightly as it gets closer to the ground. Don't worry, that's normal. The pilots are preparing for a smooth landing.
Yes, landing is an exciting moment because you know you're about to reach your destination. But you'll also feel the plane's wheels touch the runway. It might be a bit bumpy, but that's okay. The pilot will slow the plane down quickly, and soon you'll be rolling toward the gate.
One thing to remember is that after the plane lands, it takes a few more minutes to reach the gate where you can exit. You'll hear an announcement from the pilot, something like, "Welcome to city name. Please remain seated with your seatbelt fastened until we arrive at the gate."
Yes, it's important to stay seated until the seatbelt sign turns off. Some people stand up too quickly, but it's safer to wait until the plane has fully stopped at the gate. Once the seatbelt sign is off, you can gather your things and get ready to leave the plane.
And remember, when the plane lands, everyone is usually eager to get off, so there's a bit of a wait. You don't have to rush. Just wait until it's your turn to stand up and take your carry-on from the overhead bin. Be careful when taking your bag down because it might have moved around during the flight.
That's a good tip. Bags can shift during the flight, so be cautious. Now, after you've gathered your things, it's time to leave the plane. You'll either walk through another jet bridge or, in some cases, you might have to take a bus to the terminal. Either way, you're on your way to the next step, which is immigration or customs if you're arriving in a new country.
Yes, customs and immigration can sound a bit confusing, but we'll explain it step by step. If you're arriving in a different country, you have to go through immigration first. Immigration is where they check your passport and visa to make sure you're allowed to enter the country.
That's right. You'll stand in line and wait your turn to speak with an immigration officer. They'll ask you a few simple questions like why you're visiting the country and how long you plan to stay. It's important to answer honestly and clearly.
For example, if you're traveling for vacation, you can say, "I'm here for a holiday." If you're traveling for work, you can say, "I'm here for business." They might also ask you where you'll be staying, so it's good to know the name of your hotel or the address of the place you're staying.
Yes, and don't be nervous. The officers are there to make sure everything is in order. Once they stamp your passport, you're all set to enter the country. After immigration, the next step is customs.
Customs is where they check what you're bringing into the country. Some countries have strict rules about what you can and can't bring, like food, plants, or large amounts of money. Usually, there are two lines, one for people with nothing to declare, and one for people who need to declare something. If you're not carrying anything special, you can go through the line for nothing to declare.
And if you're not sure, you can always ask a customs officer. They're there to help. Most people don't have anything to declare, so they can pass through customs quickly. But if you do have something, just follow the instructions and fill out any forms they give you.
Luggage. Do you remember when we dropped off our bags at the baggage counter before boarding the plane? Well, now it's time to get them back.
Yes, and this part is pretty simple. After customs, you'll go to the baggage claim area. This is where all the luggage is brought from the plane. There are large conveyor belts where the suitcases slowly move around. You just need to wait and watch for your bag.
Make sure to double-check that the bag is yours. Sometimes people have similar-looking suitcases, so it's important to look at the luggage tag or any unique feature on your bag, like a colorful strap or sticker, to make sure it's yours.
That's a great tip, Linda. I always put a bright ribbon on my suitcase so I can spot it easily. Once you've collected your luggage, you're almost done. But there's one more step leaving the airport.
Yes, depending on where you are, you might need to take a taxi, bus, or train to get to your final destination. Some airports have ride-sharing services like Uber or Lyft, and most have signs that show you where to go for public transportation.
It's a good idea to have a plan for how you'll leave the airport before you arrive. If you're taking a taxi, there are usually official taxi stands where you can wait in line. Be sure to use the official taxis or ride services to avoid any problems.
Yes, and if you're traveling to a country where you don't speak the language, you can always write down the address of your hotel or destination and show it to the driver. That way, there's no confusion. And don't forget to exchange some money at the airport if you need to, especially if the country uses a different currency.
That's a really good tip. It's always helpful to have some local money with you. Many airports have ATMs or currency exchange booths, so you can get cash before you leave. And once you've taken care of all that, you're free to enjoy your trip.
Yes, after all the planning, waiting, and traveling, you've finally made it to your destination. You've successfully navigated the airport experience, and now it's time to relax and enjoy your time in a new place. Whether it's for work or vacation, you've done a great job.
Absolutely. So just to recap, in this final part of our series, we covered the process of landing, going through immigration and customs, picking up your luggage, and leaving the airport. It might seem like a lot, but once you've done it a couple of times, it becomes much easier.
And the most important thing is to stay calm and follow the signs and instructions. Airports are designed to guide you, and there are always people around to help if you're unsure about something.
That's a great point, Linda. Don't be afraid to ask for help, whether it's from airport staff, flight attendants, or even fellow travelers. Everyone's been through the same experience, so they'll understand if you have questions.
Exactly. And that brings us to the end of our airport journey. We hope this series has been helpful and has made you feel more confident about navigating an airport in English. It's all about learning, practicing, and staying patient.
Thank you for joining us on this 3-part journey through the airport. We've covered everything from arriving at the airport, boarding the plane, flying, and now arriving at your destination. We hope you've enjoyed it as much as we have.
Yes, thank you so much for listening. And remember, airports can seem busy and a little overwhelming, but with the right preparation and a bit of patience, you'll get through it just fine.
That's right, and if you ever need to refresh your memory, you can always come back and listen to this podcast again. Safe travels to all of you, and we'll see you in our next episode with more English tips and lessons.
Bye for now.
Goodbye, everyone.